some details of the implementation of the motivational processes based on the regulation of energy homeostasis. Considering the role similarity between some modules of the general model, and in order to avoid redundancy in the definition of subprocesses, some modules were joined together. This model integrates 12 modules classified into a black or white boxes, signaled with a red asterisk. The black boxes marked with an asterisk are not analyzed here because they are beyond this proposal scope and represent output modules. For example, the perception of motivational state, reward processing, and goal-directed decision-making. The white boxes represent the model's core. Gastrointestinal tract, GIT, is involved in absorbing food nutrients to release hormones from the stomach, pancreas, and gut through chemosensors. Blood is the primary means for distributing nutrients and hormones to the entire body, mainly to central nervous system regions, so not protected by the blood-brain barrier. BPM is ventral posteromedial nucleus of the thalamus. Area postrema and nucleus tractus solitarius, APNTS, integrates chemical and visosensory information by modality and objective from feeding and fasting states. Dorsomotor nucleus or paraventricular hypothalamus, DMN or PVH, influences the modulation of sensory motor patterns linked to the GIT organs for improving satiation, sensations by action of the energy balance through the connection with NTS or area postrema. Arcuate nucleus of hypothalamus evaluates energy balance for generating hunger states from the glucose, insulin, leptin, and ghrelin signals that all were modulated or simulated. Posterior insular cortex, PIC, and paraventricular thalamus, PVT, are also signaled in the model. Lateral hypothalamus and suprachiasmatic nucleus from hypothalamus, and also nucleus accumbens, NACC, and VTA, ventral tegmental area. To set up a motivational state, it all starts by the detection of visceral and bloodstream biomarkers in the GIT, equations 1 to 7 in the slide, and the blood, which are signaled in equations 8 to 15 in the next slide. The sensory biomarkers intensity is modulated based on the current energy level by the PVM or DMN in the nucleus tractus solitarius or the area postrema, equations 16 to 17 in the next slide. Then this information is sent to the insular cortex for its integration with homeostatic information, and that's explained in equations 18 to 20 in the next slide. The bloodstream biomarkers are integrated in the nucleus tractus solitarius and sent to assess and produce a hunger state in the nucleus arcuatus, equations 21 to 22 in the next slide. Part of a complete homeostatic state by the lateral hypothalamus is incorporated with hunger sensation in the insula, posterior insula. The modification of motivational arousal requires to modulate the arousal away from the homeostatic state. A significant side effect of this modification is its influence on evaluating the motivational value and salience of external cues that predict a reward. For this proposal, only the flow of motivational arousal supported by physiological pathway is considered. GIT and blood to AP and nucleus of tractus solitarius to nucleus arcuatus to lateral hypothalamus. The homeostatic state influences the motivational arousal, inducing activation of the organism by the ventral tegmental area. This processing collaborates with the evaluation of wanting that the nucleus accumbens performs, and during this process, the incentive salience of external cues increases, linking the signal with satisfying the current need. This figure shows a general view of the blood biomarkers regulation by hormones, peptides, molecules, and body properties. Also is influenced by patterns of diurnal and nocturnal habits, whose relationship can be inhibitory or excitatory. Inhibitory connections diminish or restrict variable dynamics, and excitatory connections have the opposite effect. They increase production or release, as we see, for example, excitatory connections of insulin, ghrelin, glucose in blood, and how inhibitory patterns like glucose from the stomach, for example, with ghrelin in other parts of the central nervous system. For the functioning and validation of the proposed model, it was implemented using a middleware called C framework. The framework was developed to implement bio-inspired cognitive architectures under the distributed paradigm. This approach favors interaction with other systems or cognitive mechanisms that collaborate with our system proposed in this work. For example, perception, decision-making, associative learning, memory, and others. For comparison of data triggered by the proposed model and the works in humans, some results, some parameters related to blood biomarker and visceral biomarker regulation were considered and detailed in the reviewed works. For example, features about meals, duration in minutes, number of meals per day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and energy content in the CHO and glucose. This information was obtained from the reviewed studies. These results are illustrated in the graphics of figure 9 from A to H. The graphs display data about time hours in the x-axis, and biomarkers in blood concentrations are expressed based on their measurement units, for example, picomole, nanomole, and millimole over a liter in the y-axis. Concerning curves that describes the biomarkers in blood, the red line represents our model results, while the green and blue lines illustrate other works outcomes. Meals are described with vertical dashed lines between the sections of the graph. As we can see, some of the expressions of the model are very close to those of the studies related. In addition, the behavior of hunger and satiation signals over time is presented in figures from I to L. For this case, the x-axis is given in minutes, and the y-axis represents a subjective self-assessment from these studies and the punctuations of the model. The visual analog scale is a personal way of assessing hunger and satiety state through a questionnaire. These type of signals are parts of the viscerosensory biomarkers. The appetitive motivation is a process to be integrated into goal-directed systems because this provides metrics or factors that partially influence when a behavior or action starts, challenge, or ends. Based on neuroscientific evidence, this proposal identified how appetitive motivation influences goal-directed behavior. It also identified the main blood biomarkers and visceral biomarkers whose synergic action produces motivational hunger states. This proposal can be refined to detect primary factors that directly or indirectly impact the biomarkers in blood, kinetics, and consequently trigger a problem such as obesity or diabetes. For example, the elimination of insulin-dependent blood glucose mechanisms or the secretion of insulin-dependent blood glucose are some variables considered in the model that need to be explored more. This is the group of work, and Tlazohcamatic which means thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Francisco. Does someone have a question? No? The next presentation or talk is here, the author, I don't know. The Dr. Kriskiv is here. I think so. No.
I think not yet.
Okay. Um,
My name is Saveli. I'm one of co-authors of the paper, and I will be talking about COVID forecasting for Russia regions. Um, so this is important because if you know how many confirmed cases you have in the next few weeks, you can plan ahead countermeasures, hospital beds, or whatever. It's useful. And last year, the, the last year best models that showed the best accuracy during retrospective testing on history samples were tomorrow is today, SEER and exponential smoothing, which are simple and um, well, series modeling, but it's therefore a simple model which doesn't require a large training samples. Actually, doesn't require any. Neural networks therefore showed a quite bad accuracy last year. So because of lack of training samples. So current work uses retrospective evaluation on new data to see if anything changed during last year, and if on Russian data, neural networks can, with current amount of data, show comparable accuracy with such simple models, which was the best last year. So I'd like to start with data sets that we have. There is a Yandex Data Lens, and it collects daily statistics on cumulative confirmed, recovered, and death cases for each day since 3rd March of 2020. To, today, but this paper was kind of half a year ago written, and that's why data was limited to February. It has the dataset experiments were conducted on contained 700 days for each of 85 regions, which are quite large amount of samples, and that is the point of the article, to try neural networks, because that set becomes larger. So how do we prepare our data? We normalize, we take confirmed cases in each region and normalize it to population. All timeline is split equally into 5 parts, and these 5 parts are used to form 4 folds, which contains trained part and test part. Test parts always has the same length, while trained part increases with each fold by one fifth of the data. And basically, you use larger training samples with each fold. So we can see the dynamic, how model behaves with such increase. Current paper compares 3 forecast approaches. It's population dynamics models, statistical models, here it's exponential smoothing, and neural networks that use samples from all regions. So basically it's one model for all 85 Russian regions. The target value of forecast in current paper is confirmed cases for 14 days. Population models that this paper describes is SEER. It's quite known for epidemic forecasting. It stands for suspected, infected, removed. Suspected, all people. This model, it splits population into 3 groups. First is suspected groups, that's people who can be hypothetically infected. So from suspected group, one can go to infected group, and therefore after a person has been infected, he either dies or recover, and therefore he goes in the removed group. And the model basically is these 3 differential equations with constant coefficients beta and gamma, that speed of transferring between groups, suspended to infected, infected to removed. So if you will differentiate, like take the derivative with step 1, you will get the following equations, from which you can derive the beta on current day. And if you know the beta on today, you can calculate how many suspended cases will be to the next day, and therefore you can do this 15 times and calculate the difference between 15th day since today and first, and that will be the total number of confirmed cases in a period. The SEER model differs that beta isn't constant. It is after regressively calculated for each day between 1st and 15th, and that's the population models this paper. The idea of population models this paper describes. We also consider exponential smoothing, as that was one of the best models during last year on Russia. And we do 2 versions of it. One goes by daily cases, one goes by moving sum cases. That one that goes by daily cases forecasts daily cases and therefore sums them. One that goes by moving sums predict the 15th moving sum, like model before. The neural network that we use looks like this. It takes as input all samples from training part. They are split with moving window by 28 days, and for out it's 14 days. And it uses some examples from all regions. So it also uses ID region, vectorize it, and therefore concatenates this with LSTM output. After it goes to dense, and therefore it goes to output. So here you can see the forecast example. One can see that LSTM on first fault is the worst model because of lack of training examples in training sample. But as time goes on, it becomes similar to other models, which is good. And here are the results that paper shows. Basically, what do you need to see? That all models are pretty much the same, except for the first fault, where LSTM are significantly worse. Due to lack of examples. But after first fault, the accuracies are pretty much the same. And here you can see the averages of for Moscow and for Russia as a whole. Also, it's of course it's better for smooth lines as Russia as a whole to use more simple models that gives less noise during forecasts. So the difference between LSTM for Russia and simple models are pretty significant. But for other regions such as Moscow, it's pretty similar. And for last cases, it even shows better results a little for last faults. And this column is the same split for faults, but the last date is considered February 21. So these numbers cannot be derived from the table that you see here. And that's pretty much the same. That's pretty much all. I mean, if you have any questions, that's my first time. I don't know what else to say, to do. I'd be glad to answer.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor.
I'm currently a student, and that's my first time participating in the conference. So that's why I'm so inconsequent.
You did great. Thank you. Is there any questions from the auditory? Do we have any questions for Sabertia Saveli? Okay. Okay. I don't know if is here the next talk, which is Vyacheslav Wolfengagen. Is here to present the work number 88, lambda calculus combinators. Yeah, is it here?
Excuse me. No, actually, I'm the previous speaker.
Yeah.
Because I was in the plenary talk, so I could not attend it in the.
Don't worry. Yeah. Well, Mishra, we continue with you, please.
Oh, thanks. Let me share my screen then.
Please go ahead.
Yes, I'm trying to share my screen. Please let me know if you can see the slides now.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah,
okay, thanks. Good. Thanks for attending the talk. And myself, Amit Mishra. I'm a professor in electrical engineering department in the University of Cape Town. So in this talk, I will present some preliminary work on an interesting architecture which we have been working on, which has been inspired by Brain. So before I talk about the solution, I will talk about the challenges that this solution will try to solve. So there are two types of challenges that this solution will try to solve. The first challenge is about perception. So I'm pretty sure you remember this kind of rear view mirrors, and they used to have these lines. I don't think many of them have these lines nowadays because it's a convex mirror. So the objects in the mirror are actually closer than what they appear. So it means that if you see something, you have to act as if it is nearer. Now, that implies few things. Number one, okay, how close it is. How do we expect a normal driver to gauge the difference in the actual distance and what it appears here? Secondly, it also takes some cognitive load, like some brain power, to perceive this thing and translate to what might be the actual distance. And while driving long distances, the drivers might not be aware of these things. The point is that when we are designing AI algorithms nowadays, especially those which interact with human beings, we are not taking into account a very crucial part, which is how is the user going to react what he sees as the output from the neural network or the deep learning networks. That's because the perception level of every human being is different, number one. Number two, even for the same human being, depending on the time and situation that person has been through, his cognitive load is also different. This becomes very crucial when we are trying to use AI in industrial automation. So in industrial automation, let us say we are implementing an AI algorithm to process the data and find out what's going on in the factory, and then display those things to the operator. Now the operator's mental state might not be the same all the time. Sometimes he might be more stressed. How do we make sure that that is taken into account by the AI algorithm while it is presenting things to the operator? And if that can be changed so that the operator's reaction is guaranteed. Yeah. The second challenge comes when we talk about our cognitive architectures. So it's accepted that at least in neuroscience community, that our prefrontal cortex, the cortical layers, there are like 6 layers through which information is processed. Now, with each upgoing layer, the abstraction level of information that increases. So information becomes more and more abstract. There are a few challenges which has made it very complex to implement the total flow in the human cortex. Number one, there are lots of feedback. As you can see, there are feedbacks up and down, and there are feedbacks between the action and the perception cycles, the streams, especially these ones, as you can see, connecting the perception and action branches. Those feedbacks are very difficult to implement in real softwares. Secondly, how do we implement the top-down information flow? Information, as of now, let us say we are using a deep learning algorithm that takes data and creates information. But the question is, okay, when we want to take a decision, and can that change the way the deep learning algorithm is processing things? There are a few solutions around, but that's still quite a big challenge. And that also takes us to the whole symbolic versus sub-symbolic layers in brain architecture, and how it is an ongoing challenge to integrate them together so that we can have a seamless system. Integration has got 2 challenges. Number one, the top-down thing, and number 2, how do we make sure that this top-down information is used properly in training the whole system together. Now, to break that challenge, let us divide the layers into the symbolic and cognitive layers and the non-symbolic layers. Now, implementation of non-symbolic layers are quite mature now, using deep learning algorithms, and also statistical algorithms are also quite powerful in this. So the point is that machine learning algorithms are good enough to implement the non-symbolic or sub-symbolic layers. When it comes to the symbolic and cognitive layers, that is where things are a bit more challenging. Some parts, for example, the association cortex, which can well be modeled by ontological modeling. So that's also to some extent possible to implement. And for implementing the cognitive layers, there are established architectures like SOAR and ACTAR. So these different parts are implemented separately. Now, combining them is always a big challenge. Now, we are thinking, okay, what can we do so that we can have at least something working? In that, we propose that instead of trying to implement all the layers, let us take the cognitive layers and maybe part of the symbolic layers and replace those with an actual human being. The actual human being will be acting on behalf of these layers. That way, the human being and the non-symbolic or sub-symbolic layers together can act as one cognitive entity. So there are two major challenges in this architecture. Number one, information feedback from the human being to the primary sensory cortex and primary motor cortex. How does that happen? How do we make sure that this information from the real human being is fed to these layers? And just feeding back is not enough, right? Because we should have a methodology, an architecture. We should be able to take those feedback and change them on the fly. So that is the major challenge. And second challenge is that how do we make sure that this whole system is automated? We don't really want the human being to be sitting and changing 500 knobs. That's not ideal at all. We should have an automated process that sees the reaction level of the human being, quantifies that, and takes that as the information feedback to the non-symbolic layers. So we have got two things that we are trying to combine here. Number one, to implement the cognitive architecture in its totality, we are replacing the upper layers with a real human being. So we are putting the human in loop. Number two, to make sure that the human in loop acts as an integrated part, we are using perception-based quantified labels, which will be used to change the deep learning models. Now, the first one, perception modeling. How do we do that? So let us say we find that, okay, the human being has got certain level of perception. We want that the deep learning, which is deep learning models, which are used to model the primary sensory cortex or primary motor cortex, they should change the way they are working. That can be done in a very elegant manner if we are using some masking layers here. And the level of masking is determined by how much attentive the human being is. For example, if I'm just giving a very crude example, but this masking layer part has been already published as another paper. But this is the way to incorporate that. For example, let us say the human being seems to be a little bit non-attentive. So then the masking can be more transparent. In that way, it sends more information through the different layers, and that way it can create different outputs slightly so that it can grab the attention of the human being. So that way, we have already taken care of how do we make sure that the perception level that is measured is taken care of, is fed back to the non-symbolic layers. Now, with this together, we present the total architecture, the perception-centric human-in-loop cognitive architecture. You can see that it kind of follows a DIKW, data, information, knowledge, wisdom kind of layer architecture. So from the environment, the data is taken, and that is processed by machine learning and pattern extraction algorithms. As we all know, CNNs are very powerful pattern extraction architectures. So they can be used as the part which takes the data and creates information. Then we are using ontological analysis so that we are creating knowledge or abstract meta information from the information that is generated by the machine learning layers. And those knowledge or those labels, they are presented to the human in loop through user interface. Now, in the action part of the loop, same thing happens. Depending on what the user wants to do, that is captured by the user interface, and then that is fed to the machine learning based interpretation of commands from the human, and that is then interpreted by another layer of CNN so that actuations and those kind of maneuvers happen. Now, there is one major challenge here, and that is the perception measurement. So how do we make sure that we measure the perception level or the cognitive load level of the human being? And in that, there are some work, and they mostly use a lot of sensors in the body of the human being to measure the level of perception or the measure of the level of cognitive load in the human being. That is fine for lab kind of work, but that's not really enough for some real environment. For example, if you want to have the workers in the factory to put them on all the time, that's not going to happen. So we want something that is non-invasive. In that, with keeping that in mind, we are now focusing on 4 ways of capturing the perception level of the cognitive load. Number 1, voice-based cognitive load monitoring. So that gets activated only when there is a possible failure, because when there is a possible failure, the human being or the operator on the floor, they usually call the call center or the emergency call center. From the way they are talking, we try to extract the cognitive load. And this is not really a new thing, because emotion recognition from speech, that's a pretty established field now. But here we are trying to extract the cognitive load from the speech. It's incrementally new. It's not really disruptively new. The second one is eye tracking, and that's also psychological researches and researches in management marketing. They have showed the validity of eye tracking to track the level of cognitive load in the human being. We are using that as well. And if possible, if the operator is working in front of a monitor, then we have the chance to also monitor the dilation of the pupil. Now, dilation of pupil is a well-proven and accepted way to measure the cognitive engagement of the human being. And lastly, we are using the outputs from health bands, things that are already captured anyway by any normal health band. For example, the heart rate variability and the motion of the limbs through the IMU. So using these 4, we are still trying to find a quantitative model to find a level of cognitive load that then can be used to modulate the masking level, which can then change the way the machine learning pattern classification layer works. Coming to what's the status now, the current implementation initiatives. So I'm working with a group of industries and a university in Sweden through a project in which the focus is mostly if there is a failure on factory floor, how do you make sure that the things are restarted as soon as possible with as little harm to the overall flow as possible. In that, my part, we are focusing on modeling the user cognitive load in the case of failure of machines in factory floor. So that's just part of the whole BICA architecture that I have shown, but that's just a small project that has started recently. In addition to that, in terms of the future plans, the big challenge currently in front of us is a proper quantitative model of perception, so that those 4 measurements that we discussed, how do we take those and create 1 or 2 numbers which will represent the perception level and cognitive load. That's a major scientific blue sky kind of work. And in terms of implementation, we foresee that this kind of architecture will have a lot of use in industrial automation. So we are, just like the group in Sweden, we are also talking and open to collaborative approaches where we are talking to different industries to see if we can co-develop this architecture for some industries. Because this can really benefit in terms of reducing the failures from human error, because human error is it's a broad category that industries use just to say that the human was not attentive. But then human beings are not robots. They're not supposed to be the same level of attentive all the time. How do we make sure that the whole automation system takes the human being also into account? So yeah, so that's the end of my slides. I'll be very happy to take questions. And as I mentioned, I'm very open to collaborations as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions in the audience? Please raise your hand or ask it directly to the presenter. Questions, please.
If not, then thanks everyone for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for sharing with us your presentation. Is here in the room one of the next speakers? Is Larisa Ismailova or Vyacheslav Wolfengachen or Sergei Kosikov? No? I see that one of the next speakers is here, not one of these next paper, but one of the papers that is at the end almost. Andreu Andronenko. Would you like to present us, Andrew?
Yes, if you can wait for 10 seconds or so.
Yes, please. We wait for you to share your screen and start your presentation. Andrew Andronenko is going to present us the paper number 33, Implementation of Value-Based Curiosity Mechanism in Reinforcement Learning Algorithm based on A3c. Please, whenever you're ready.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Good day, dear colleagues. My name is Andrew Andronenko, and I'm a research engineer from Kurchatov Institute. I'll be talking about the implementation of value-based curiosity mechanism in reinforcement learning algorithm based on A3c. The task we were facing is an ordinary reinforcement learning tasks that can be formulated as an MDP, and we have a discrete time environment. We have states, actions, the rules of transition in between states, and external rewards that's given to us by the environment. We have agent that acts into environment and tries to maximize the reward. One typical algorithm we've been taken as a baseline is the A3c algorithm, which is an asynchronous parallel version of the actor-critic algorithm. And the actor-critic agent can be represented as a neural network consisting of 3 blocks. Here it is on the picture, it's block S, responsible for encoding states, block V, estimating the V value function, and block A, predicting actions. Common difficulties for this and many other algorithms are sparse reward environments, because sparse reward makes it a lot more harder to explore the environment and to find the best strategy, and efficient data utilization. That's why the not only online learning algorithms exist. One solution for these problems is curiosity mechanisms. The curiosity is often implemented in the form of an additional reward generated by the agent itself. I'll call it the internal reward. So the curious agents generate an internal reward for the states they find interesting, and there are a lot of different variants. For example, just a simple visit count, and we give an internal reward for the states we visited 0 times or so. Or there are different types of variants, like estimating the reachability of states, or predicting the random network's output on these states to give it an additional reward. It was shown that curiosity mechanisms help us to improve exploration and utilize data better, because the agent will put more attention to those interesting states. But different implementations might add computational overhead. The idea we present in our work is the idea of a simple and computationally easy curiosity mechanism. So what we do is taking the A3c actor-critic agent, we add the new R block responsible for predicting the Q value function. And the error of this block is the internal reward for the agent used to train the V block. So it's included in its loss. It is important that the R block only gets predicted V's and predicted action probabilities as its input. And it has an LSTM layer, so it can be aware of the sequences of V's and sequences of actions predictions taken. And I also need to mention that the gradients are not propagated back from this block to blocks A and V, so it can be equally treated as a separate network. Why this idea occurred? We observed that at some environments, actions taken in lots of states are not important, and agent just learns to do random but fixed things. And it becomes kind of a routine performed by the agent until it arrives at an important state when the action really means something. I'll illustrate it a bit later. And while these routine states presented, the block error can easily adapt to have rather small error on repeating routine sequences of actions. And it's also will have big errors when getting unexpected rewards, meaning that the important state was breached. We also used a signed reward to decrease importance of states which queue can be easily predicted, as well as upgrade the importance of states which can be not. We've tested an A3c algorithm with actor critic agents augmented with this R block on the task of Pong. It's Pong deterministic v4 from the gym package. We've got 6 actions available and external reward when goal is scored by each of the contestants. We've used raw image input with preprocessing to cut out the unimportant parts of the image, this top and bottom spacings. And on the GIF here, you can see that there's a lot of time while the ball is flying from agent to the other side and back when it is unimportant what the agent does actually. Yeah, so it can stuck in the bottom of the picture and just wait for the ball to come back. And here is the resulting model architecture. It has roughly the same amount of trainable parameters as the A3c baseline. And it uses just convolutions to encode states and LSTMs followed by linear dense layers in blocks A, R, and V. And so we can see that the R block takes only 7 values as its input, 6 action probabilities, and 1 value estimation at each step. And here are the results for comparing the baseline with the proposed algorithm. We can see that the proposed curiosity mechanism makes training faster, especially at the beginning, where it is mostly important to distinguish between the important and unimportant states. And at the end of the training, these additional rewards just become not so helpful, and so the curves match. And here are the results for different epsilon values. The epsilon parameter regulates how much this additional reward will be, how much of this additional reward will be added to the V block class. And we can see that even small values of an additional reward help us to speed up the training. But if we add too much of an additional reward, it becomes comparable to the original reward that V block tries to predict, and it spoils our V value function estimations and destabilizes the training. As a conclusion, we can say that presented mechanism helps us to utilize data better with the A3c algorithm on this Pong environment. And it also introduces a kind of a partially observable MTP framework, where the block can only observe these interactions for use in curiosity techniques. And we think that future it needs to be tested in the other environments, and maybe we can try to train the R block in an offline manner. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Andrew. Do we have in the auditorium questions, please?
I'm just being curious. There were also a parameter gamma. What does it stand for?
The gamma is the standard discount factor used in the A3c algorithm. And it stands for the horizon of planning of the agent depends on this parameter gamma. Well, here we used only gamma equal to 0.99. So you can treat this as a whole, as a one parameter.
And why 0.99? Is it there some specific reason, or it's just?
It's just a common value, because we always want our agent to look away as far as it can. And with gamma equal to 0.99, we can plan on kind of on 100 steps forward, and it suits the task.
Mm-hmm. And is there some specific reason why it's not the one? If gamma is one, it breaks something, or more than one?
It should not be one. Well, you'd better. So no, you just can't look forwards on at the infinity.
Horizon.
You can't use the infinite horizon, because it will be unpredictable.
Fine, thanks.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Thank you, Sabatier. Is there any other question? Okay, if there is any other question, maybe we can ask if some of the speakers are present now in the room. Larisa Ismailoyeva, Vyacheslav Wolfengachen, Sergei Kosikov, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing, Sergei Kartashov, or Dina Multireva, or Olga Martinova. Somebody. The papers are the 88 lambda calculus.
Sergei Kosikov, who is responsible for this talk, is ill today, and other Wolfengagen is unavailable. I'm sorry, I couldn't contact him.
You're gonna present the paper?
I can't talk this paper. I'm not familiar with the text.
Okay.
I have just contacted Kosikov and asked him if he can be present now, and he said that he is ill. He got sick.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much. Well,
he also said that his talk is pre-recorded and was uploaded to the EasyShare.
okay, it was presented as a poster. Okay, in the poster sessions with the recorded talks. Okay, thank you very much. Sergey Kartashov, Dina Multirieva, Olga Martinova for the paper number 99, reproduce correlations between integrity of white matter tracks and self-reported anxiety. Is the paper, the authors of the paper 99 around? Okay, we can wait a few minutes if this last paper shows up somebody from this paper. They were scheduled for 11 o'clock, so we can wait some minutes if you don't mind. Thank you, Igor, for your excusing of Alisa and his group. If you want to check the paper, you can check it probably because all of the talks that were in EasyChair were uploaded to the e-poster session. You can probably hear and see that talk in the Mozilla Hubs poster sessions.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is Sergey Kartashov, Dina Mitiureva, or Olga Martinova ready to present the paper number 99, reproduce correlations between integrity of white matter tracks and self-reported anxiety? Are they here? Are they ready to present? It will be the last presentation before we move all to the auditorium to see the discussion panel chaired by Peter Boltuk, and afterwards the keynote speaker, Anthony Randall McIntosh. So if they are not here, I think we can all move to the auditorium room to be able to see the panel and the keynote lecture. Thank you very much to the presenters, and it was great to see you, and thank you for sharing your work with us. Thank you very much. We close this session for now.
Thanks. See ya.
See you.